Hello and welcome back to the Resleevables Nemesis edition. I am your host, Patrick Sullivan, joined by Pro Tour champion, Magic the Gathering Hall of Famer, Patrick Chapin. This is a bit of an oddball as far as sets go, but there are a lot of players out there from our era, myself included, who are extremely fond of this.
Absolutely. I mean, it's almost like a dead cat bounce in a way where there's like, after the weird period, I mean, the inflation of Ice Age into Mirage into Tempest into Saga and things just got out of hand, and then they have to pull back with Masques Block. There's this blip where it's like, actually, this set's kind of strong and powerful and sweet, and it kind of ties together. Like, it kind of shows that it's kind of like nice to show that you can make a dope set even powered down.
I think that's a really good thing to call out, because when Mercadian Masques came out, I, as a competitive player or an aspiring competitive player, had the reaction of, oh, I guess this is what it looks like now for things to be powered down. To the extent there were strong cards, they were kind of just repetitive, not super interesting designs. And Nemesis is not short on designs that one would describe as interesting.
Yeah, I would also describe a lot of what's going on as dynamic. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of dynamic gameplay in Nemesis.
Any particular memories you have of when this set came out? You were, much further into the competitive scene than I was.
So, like, what kind of memories were going on at the time? Like, I mean, God, I remember playtesting for the Pro Tour up in Toronto. And I remember the sweet brews that people came up with and just how excited, like David Williams bursting from the seams with the kind of brew that he came up with for, people were working on, blue decks and rebels and green white and black green and blue green, and the amount of brews that people were coming up with. It was also awesome the amount that people got excited about brewing in a way that wasn't true for Masque. And it was really, I remember like during Masque, it was like not clear that we weren't going to be like, it's like, is it going to be 2 years of this? Is it going to be like this for a long time? And the fact that Nemesis made brewing fun again, I just remember, the amount of people lit up, kind of like bouncing around and actually kind of like excited to show their crazy stuff.
Funny enough, my engagement with it is kind of similar to that, just at a much, much less good level of there's so many individual cards here that I just want to like try stuff with. And that was really lacking in the Masques experience for sure.
I will say, God, one Evolving Wilds, a single Evolving Wilds, like it would have done a lot for me personally as a brewer. Like a single Evolving Wilds.
No Evolving Wilds, unfortunately. We aren't there yet, but we will be back with the facts of the set momentarily. We are back with the facts for Nemesis, but before that, we want to talk about the sponsor of this segment and our longtime sponsor, Tales of Adventure. Now, you can go over to toamagic.com. That's the store website. And if you're on Twitter, make sure to be following Michael Caffrey, the store owner, over at TOA Michael. They got everything you need, sealed product, supplies, old school, standard, anything you need.
Twitter-only deals, too.
Twitter-only deals there. Yeah, that's how I got my set of Legends a little while ago. Just popped up one day and I scooped it up. So don't miss out on any of those opportunities if you're on Twitter. Again, TOA Michael. When you check out on the website, use promo code Resleevables for 5% off of all of your orders. Any order placed inside the United States comes with free tracking and shipping. And if you go to large events in North America, you're going to recognize that booth. You're going to see the staff, and they're also happy to do in-event pickup as well if that's easier for you. Tales of Adventure, Eternal lives here. Now then, the facts. Nemesis is the 19th Magic the Gathering expansion released on February 14th, 2000. The pre-release was on February 5th, 2000, and the pre-release promo was a foil, do you remember? I'd be surprised if you remembered.
Sky Shroud Poacher.
Not a
Poacher,
bad
the
guess.
Cutter. Sky Shroud Cutter. What are the two to it? Yeah.
Not a bad guess, and a better.
Not the fading, the big fatty with fading.
Oh, it's Wrathy Assassin.
Oh.
Anywho, designed by Mike Elliott, who was the lead designer on the set, Bill Rose, and Mark Rosewater. Developed by.
Great team.
That is a really good team.
That is a great team.
Developed by Mike Elliott, again the lead. Little weird to have the design and development lead be the same person, but fine. Charlie Katina, Paul Peterson, and Tu-Win Woodruff. The art direction was from Data Knudsen and Ron Spears. Nemesis contains 143 cards, 44 rares, 44 uncommons, 55 commons. This is before Mythic Rares. The Nemesis expansion symbol is the Axe of Krovax, a banger. Mm-hmm. One of the ones that stands out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love that it's not like that it's overly complicated or whatever, but it's just so distinct. It resonates with the story. It's so obvious from a... You know how sometimes blocks will have that issue where three of the three symbols all kind of look like the same thing, and you're like not even sure which one's two and which one's three?
Yep.
A year later or 2 years later?
Nemesis is the second expansion of the Masques Block, the first small set. It was the final booster set to feature foil cards with the original larger version of the foil shooting star at the bottom of the card. A smaller version of the shooting star would debut on a few promos, like Rocks from Starter 2000, then became the standard once we get to Prophecy.
Only caveat, it's the only small expansion. It's the only canonical one. We don't... We'll get to that.
Yeah, we will get to that. Yeah, old foils, bangers, the shooting star, coolest thing ever. I wonder how much of modern day foils and the amount of purchase that they have is that residual memory of what it looked like during this era. Just so cool.
Maybe for, the elder millennials and the Gen Xers. Mm-hmm. I do think mathematically, just the sheer number of people who actually played during Nemesis compared to today.
It's fair.
But maybe I'm a hater.
All right, so Nemesis was sold in a few ways. You have the 15 card boosters with a rare, 3 uncommons, and 11 commons. The booster pack used one illustration, Slip-Tide Serpent. We'll get to that in the award segment.
When it's perfect, like, it's a solved problem.
What do we really want to highlight here?
Yeah.
There were the pre-con decks. Deck lists. Breakdown, green and blue. Breakdown gives you the advantage just long enough to give your opponents a thorough bashing. Gargantuan creatures can be played early, but with a slight catch. They decay quickly.
This was actually a dope deck.
This is dope.
That one actually played pretty well. Like we'll get to that whole mechanic and everything in this, with the awards, but I like when they are able to pull off a pre-con deck that has a feel that's not the same as every other pre-con deck of those two colors.
Yes.
And it's true to the set, and it's got actual play, but it's not overwhelming for a novice, at least relative to the standards of the day.
And the deck actually isn't that heavy on fading. Certainly there's some of it, but there's also a fair number of just like normal cards and stuff.
Totally. And the stuff, like the mental process of what it's like to use them, uses kind of like the same algorithm. Like when you're trying to figure that out, what you learn about one card actually helps you with another card. Like there is a generalization that's like real.
Yeah. We have Eruption, red and white. Eruption is bubbling over with creatures that can spell death to your rivals. Anything they fail to destroy is fodder for the Lacolith and Flowstone brutes that inhabit this deck.
The blue-green deck was pretty sweet.
All right, Mercenaries, mono black. With Mercenaries, you enlist an infantry of vile fiends to do your bidding. Where there is one, there are many, as you use these creatures' recruiting ability to spawn other monstrosities until the victory is secured.
This one actually played okay, too. I remember playing it against the blue-green deck. Mm-hmm. Like, they both have personality.
Definitely. And there is actually kind of something interesting, quote unquote.
No,
interesting.
It is actually interesting. I know what you mean. Yeah.
The Mercenaries chump blocking versus fading creatures.
Absolutely. And some of the fading abilities, particularly in the blue-green deck, interact in a compelling way against the Mercenaries, where the Mercenary it's like one of those dynamic gameplay things where you both are paying asymmetric costs and getting asymmetric edges, and you both have a lot of counterplay against the other. You know, like the mercenaries have they have some ways to scrap out that last 2 or 3 points of damage that are like, that actually let them overpower, or not overpower, but work around the more powerful blue-green deck.
Yeah. And then lastly, we have the Replicator. Green and black. Your opponents will have double the trouble defending against the duplicating creatures of Replicator. What little more it costs to play these Harbingers of Doom is well worth the suffering they inflict. And, we got a bunch of Spell Shapers, it looks like. Squallmonger. Doesn't look great.
No, that's the one you like when you and your buddy are playing blue-green versus mono-black, you let the other two people play with the red-white deck and the black-green deck.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough as someone who is running an LGS at this time. The precons were really sweet, but the way that they were sold is, you got a box of 12 of them. So you had 3 copies of 4 decks, and they were very rarely created equal. So you got in the spot where you could either charge different amounts for the decks, which feels bad for people.
That's what people did in Michigan.
Yeah, you don't really have a choice. Or you just sit there with a stack of replicators as all the mono blacks and blue greens are sold. That does it for the facts. We will be back momentarily with the mechanics. Welcome back to the Resleevables Nemesis edition. We're ready for the mechanics, but first, a word from our newest sponsor. Bringing you this section, Dragon Shield. So excited. Woo! We have not done a video yet. We've done some podcasts, but it's video time. Dragon Shield, just the best in the business as far as sleeves and other supplies, binders, anything that you're looking to get. First of all, you can probably get it over your LGS. But second, if you're not doing that, you can go over to dragonshield.com and find everything you're looking for. If you go to checkout, use promo code Resleevables. Now, that's case sensitive. It's all lowercase letters for 5% off all of your orders. Also, in the notes for this show, there's an affiliate link that if you use would be quite helpful for us. But no matter what, make sure you're using promo code Resleevables, all lowercase letters, at checkout for 5% off of all of your orders. And just be doing the Dragon Shield stuff. We got a care package from them. It's so dope. We got the samurais over here. Anything you're looking for, we're probably going to do some like specific stuff,
Specific stuff is dope.
Some collaborations with them coming down the pipeline. Stay tuned for that. In the meantime, Dragon Shield for all of your gaming supplies and dragonshield.com or any of your LGSs or vendors that carry it as well. Now the mechanics. Nemesis introduced fading, the only new keyword mechanic in the block. That is shocking. Because remember, Rebels, Mercenaries, they were not keyworded or tagged in any way.
And nor all the alt cost or sometimes free. There were lots of cycles. The seal, so many cycles, but they did not have keywords.
Mm-hmm. And then the next set doesn't exist. So clearly there's no keywords in that either. Okay, so fading.
We need to have a keyword for just doesn't work if you pay mana. Please continue about fading.
Okay, so cards enter play with X fading counters. So fading number. And at the beginning of your upkeep, remove a fade counter from it. And if you can't, sacrifice it. So there's been variations of this mechanic over the years, but basically you just go, down, 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 and it goes away. They kind of appear in 2 ways. One is just a quote-unquote undercosted creature that isn't going to be around for very long. And then there are some cards that actually use the fading counters in some way. So you have the optionality of either having a small effect for a long time or a bursty effect for a relatively short period of time.
Well, and there's a little bit of a middle ground even. Like there's some cards that hang out that you can have for a little bit of time, but you can get little effects to reduce the amount of time that you have them. Mm-hmm. So there is kind of they did explore the space impressively well, actually.
Yep. And so we have a lot of fading in the set. Again, we're talking 143 cards, so this is a pretty significant chunk of the file. Defender and Vec.
I love you, Nemesis.
Parallax Wave, Cloudskate, Jolting Merfolk, Parallax Tide, Parallax Dementia, Parallax Nexus, Phyrexian Prowler, Ancient Hydra. I forgot
banger.
about what a banger.
No, how can you forget?
Oh, man.
That's a nice one.
Shout
That's
out, Brian.
so emblematic of the, do you want, like, pinging is sometimes, like, super dope, but having a 5-power guy for an extra turn is pretty dope. So it's like a cool decision.
And sometimes the ping helps you attack with your... Yes. Shout out Brian Kibler. Blastoderm, Sapperling Burst, Skyshroud Behemoth, Skyshroud Ridgeback, Woodripper, Rejuvenation Chamber, Rusting Golem, and Tanglewire. And then there's Parallax Inhibitor, which is a card that mentions fading. Talking about a solid 10% of the set here, but there's a lot of play to these cards, even the vanillas, of just the cost-benefit analysis of taking the hit versus trying to preserve your life total versus trying to get my opponent to be down a card.
It sounds funny, but there's a real thing. When you've got a Blastoderm and your opponent's got like 2 3/3s or whatever, 3 2/2s, there's this interesting thing of like holding a creature back to block with that has fading. That hits different.
Yes, it does.
You know?
Yeah.
That's a different, it feels different. And I don't just mean bad. You are alive at a certain spot. When you win, when you're playing something aggressive and you buy yourself extra time by having your Blastoderm hold back a little bit to buy time for your, Saproing Burst or Ancient Hydra to come down and get busy.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this mechanic is the inspiration for Vanishing down the line, and Keldon Marauders was a game piece that had so much of that experience of it is offense, but the times where it comes up as a defensive piece are so satisfying, even if it's not all that often. I also like Blastoderm, for me, was an instructive card of, again, I'm not very good, but I'm familiar with sort of the vintage Magic and Type 1 and all that kind of stuff. And there's this very myopic card advantage, card advantage, card advantage. Like that's what the game is centered around. And so bad me, my opponent plays Blastoderm, and my reaction is like, I'm just going to take 15 off of that thing. Who cares? Like they're down a card. That means they're losing. And after the second hit, sort of like, well, I don't think I can take the third hit. However, if I was trying to make my opponent be quote unquote down a card, the worst thing that I can do is like trade with it on the third shot, right? So sort of opened my eyes a little bit to the resources in Magic being a little bit more complicated than just drawing cards and you're making your opponent discard cards.
I can tell you Blastoderm is one of the most satisfying chump blocks though. Like that is a real treat to like and it depends. Obviously, it depends on what you're chumping with, right? Like, it's not like you want to have your good creature or whatever, the creature you really want block. But, like, when you have a 1/1 goblin token or an outpost token or whatever, it feels great. It feels like when you chump block the Blastoderm, you are really doing it in a way that's different from just chump blocking a different 5/5.
Yeah. The time going down is just so...
it feels like you actually got your money's worth. Like you actually did it. Like, oh, yeah, this is a third of a card extra. I'm getting card advantage over here.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I chump blocked my fair share of Blastoderms with Chris Mage, and then before damage, shoot you with Chris Mage. And card economy wise, I couldn't be down more. But I'm just like kind of getting my little edges in where I can, and maybe squeezing it out, maybe not. But that's the type of experience you can't get with conventional 5/5s that just don't go anywhere.
There's actually shockingly many ways that this comes up for really emergent gameplay. Like when you've got 3 2/2s and you can decide, you can either triple block to take down the Blastoderm without taking any damage and you only lose 2 of them, right? Or you can commit to just chumping each turn and ride it out. And it's wild because you're like, well, why would I not just triple block and be up a 2/2? But if you do that and then they deal 3 damage to one of your 3 blockers, you lose everything. And now you're taking 10 and you lost everything. So it's like really, but it can be game winning to be greedy and get an extra 2/2.
Another shout out to Blastoderm here is I think this is a really good spot for Shroud.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, make this about blocking and attacking, and the person who's on all removal, first of all, not a bad person to go after. Second, the Blastoderm eventually goes away. So it's not the experience of like, oh, well, I just can't target this thing and now it's just going to take the game over. Blastoderm itself is not even lethal. It's 15 if all the shots come in clear. So it goes after the right people without it being, you know, sort of the BS experience that some people attribute to Shroud.
Well, it's fun as far as like the Shroud versus Hexproof. I mean, I do think Hexproof, there's plenty of reasons to make Hexproof the thing instead of Shroud. But like when you're living in a world where Shroud is the thing that's going on, Blastoderm's a really dope thing to have Shroud. It's kind of awesome to be relieved of solving certain problems the same way you've solved them before. And Blastoderm, I remember that feeling of it's 15. And one of the first places you go to is you think about how to make it 20.
Yeah.
So it is super awesome that you can't just do it the way that you've done it. And it's a different puzzle, and it's not an impossible one. There's ways to do it.
And in fact, a few sets down the line, we're going to be talking about it. Secret, giving it haste. That changes the equation.
That
quite
is
a bit.
20 instead of 15.
I also, we're giving a lot of praise to Blastoderm and Ancient Hydra. I want to call out the design here that I'm not very fond of, which is Tangle Wire. Setting aside power level, and history as a lock piece or whatever, I really don't like cards that are present as symmetric and are actually wildly asymmetric, assuming you understand the rules. That's not the most
well. It depends what you mean by why. I assume what you're really saying is that it's not that it's bad that it's asymmetric with, like, how well does it work with my deck and how well does it work with your deck?
Oh no,
but rather it's asymmetric in that it looks like we are each operating under the same constraints, but actually you're just operating under the numbers are all different.
Yeah, you're basically up 2 on the opponent on each exchange.
Like 4-3-2-1 versus 2-1-0. It feels like you're not even you can get around if it was 4-3-2-1 and then versus 3-2-1, but you get over it because the card itself is using one. It feels like, oh, then the Tangle Wire's doing the thing. That's the reason why I'm getting ahead, I guess, is that but the fact that it's 2 ahead, it does feel kind of like, why am I even this is kind of fake.
It's super fake. And so there's 2 things going on here that we're talking about here for those of you who don't have a lot of experience with Tangle Wire. First of all, you tap the Tangle Wire to itself.
Yep.
That's part of it.
That's already one. That one, it's not the coolest, but at least there's a story. It feels like my card is doing something.
Yeah. The second is you can stack your triggers because, sorry, it is what it is. I'm sorry.
No,
I don't like it
true.
either. Where you basically choose the order on your turn of when do you have to tap for Tangle Wire and when does the fading counter come off. So you stack your triggers such that the fading counter comes off. So now it's 4-3. And now it's asking you to tap the 3 permanents. So you tap the Tangle Wire and 2 others. Whereas your opponent on the previous turn actually had to tap 4 things. So a little rulesy, but I can also appreciate, there is, as far as fading designs go, it as a rare in the first set that it appears in, it's not the worst thing. I don't like how
as far as
colorless,
as far as high-powered colorless land destruction with rulesy interactions go, it's actually not bad.
No, but again, it's still tapping into that same emotional experience of when you're under Tangle Wire, you feel like once I break out of this, I am just going to unleash hell on my opponent. And you're just sitting there sweating the opponent's turn, hoping they don't push too far ahead. And, it has a very almost WWE feel of someone breaking out of the sleeper hold and then going hot.
I will say it does speak to some of that, the decision making too, though. There's this experience of playing against Tangle Wire where you're like, okay, I can, if I tap my creatures, I can cast my spell, which will mean I have more cards so the Tangle Wire doesn't even hurt me as much next time. But if I tap my land, I can just get a good couple of hits in while my opponent is under Tangle Wire anyway. And then there's the middle ground where you're like, well, if I draw a land, I'll have gotten 4 extra damage. And, it's kind of sweet, some of the decisions you have to make.
Yeah, and again, it's, I give something of a pass to a quote-unquote lock piece that just goes away. So many of them in Magic history, you know, your Trinispheres and Chalice of the Voids of the world are just like, this is what the game is now. And Tangle Wire is this huge burst of prison, but then it just sort of dissipates. And that's pretty cool.
And it's prison that gives you decisions. Sometimes it doesn't because you're all like, oh, all of my stuff is tapped. But like it does, the decisions don't feel fake. Like they don't always feel fake. Like it's like a real thing.
And also another nice dimension about this is a lock piece to push. The second copy is often a little cumbersome.
Yeah, but it actually does do something.
Totally.
And you decide whether or not you play the second one now, or do you ride it out but give them a little breather, but you get more in the long term as opposed to it just being wasted.
Yeah. And unfortunately, then that really runs into the upkeep stacking stuff that I mentioned before, but still sweet as far as it goes. As mentioned before, that's the only mechanic, not only of the set.
Keyword anyway.
Yeah, keyword of not just the set, but the block. So that does it for mechanics, and we'll be back momentarily with our cycles. Welcome back to the Resleevables Nemesis edition. Before we talk about our cycles, first, a word for one of our sponsors, Bosch and Roll, Brian Koval, streaming Eternal formats 5 days a week. You can find his YouTube channel. That's Bosch and Roll. Videos up there. There's a huge archive. If you're looking to level up your game, particularly when it comes to Eternal formats, I highly recommend Brian. He is known as an Eternal weekend ringer. I don't know the last one that he hasn't top 8'd. He's won several Black Lotuses over the last however long. So very entertaining streamer, really good at Magic. And again, if you're trying to level up your Eternal game, make sure to be checking out Bosch and Roll over on YouTube. Nemesis has 15 cycles. 15. Counting continues 2 mega cycles and features 5 matching and mirrored pairs.
That's more than half the set.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Rebels. Continuation of Rebels from Mercadian Masques. The 3 with Defiant in their names can recruit. Defiant Falcon, Defiant Vanguard, Lawbringer, Lightbringer, Lynn Civvy, Defiant Hero, and Sky Shroud Poacher. Bit of an oddball, but I think that's cute.
Love it.
All right, we have the Mercenaries. That we saw these before at Mass. They're the ones that tutor up cards you'd never want to put in your deck. We have Phyrexian Driver, Phyrexian Prowler, Wrathy Assassin, Wrathy Fiend, Wrathy Intimidator, Spineless Thug, Spiteful Bully, Mog Catcher, and Sea Hunter. So again, spreading out that creature type love. I don't know how many people out there built a mercenary goblin deck or a merfolk mercenary deck, but it doesn't really cost you very much to put it in a set. And if someone does decide to do that every once in a while, I think that's sweet.
Oh my God. It was fun thinking about that stuff back in the day. I can tell you that.
Yeah. We have the tribal recruiters, Sea Hunter for merfolk, Mog Catcher for goblins, and Sky Shroud Poacher for elves. Sweet cards, and
plus, obviously, the merfolk and the mercenary one, the rebel and the mercenary one that we spoke of.
Really sweet that these actually ended up having something of a tournament resume, even though upon release they were sort of discounted as casual cards or whatever. But these ended up making a little bit of noise. Maybe not Sea Hunter so much, but the other two.
Oh no, the Sea Hunter's shown up a little, not a ton, but yeah, it's. But yes. They are surprisingly present.
Yes. We have this common spell shapers. Common creatures that have repeatable activated abilities for 1 mana and discard a card that mimic various cards in Magic history. I want to put you to the test now. See if you can get these. These are pretty rough.
Let's do it.
Netter and Doll.
I don't know what you're saying. What's the question?
That is the spell shaper. What is the card that it is casting?
Netter and Doll?
Yeah. This is too hard. I'm skipping through this.
I have no idea what these words mean.
Change of Heart. We have Trickster Mage, which is Twiddle, Plague Witch, Afflict.
I see. So you have the spell shapers, and you're talking about which ones are they? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Bola Warrior, Panic, and Harvest Mage.
Harvest Mage, making all your cards tap for whatever color you want. Assuming your lands tap for whatever color you want. Assuming you're just okay being down a mana and a card.
Yeah. A little bit of a callback maybe to the Wizard School cycle from Homelands. There's a lot in Magic's history of paying mana to make less mana.
Oh my God, Pale Moon in this set.
We have additional uncommon and rare spell shapers. Just some random spell shapers. Blue gets 2. We have Avenger and Doll, Stronghold Biologist, and Stronghold Machinist. Importantly, that gets you the Remove Soul Negate package if you're into that.
You got to lock them out.
You got to lock them out. Divining Witch, that's a really fun card.
Divining Witch was a banger.
Yeah.
We start consulting. Yes.
Yeah, talk about also, first of all, the 1 turn delay is a huge deal in making Demonic Consultation a lot more palatable. Your opponent has an interaction window. Second, some of the issue with Spell Shaper is just like, oh yeah, I'm just doing this for the rest of the game when it's good. And this one kind of naturally is on some diminishing returns.
Yeah, you also frequently don't you don't Divining Witch for the same card every turn. Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't always go that way.
Yeah, you got to be...
Sometimes it depends on the context, but it's not just the same Spell Shaper every turn.
You got to be agile with the Divining Witch because circumstances change as you use it.
That was also a satisfying card to, there were combos and ways that you could create awesome game states if you could deck yourself. Mm-hmm. And Divining Witch was a satisfying way to do it because it sets up your combo and then also finishes, the part of your strategy involving decking yourself so that you can do whatever kind of weird recursion or loop you want.
Yeah. And then...
also, I will say, Divining Witch was an exciting card to pitch Squee to.
Yes.
Let's get some card advantage, but woo, you're going to feel something.
Yeah. You can't go on like this forever. As opposed to, what's the Stone Rain one in Mercadian Masques? That one can go on forever. We have Archmage and Stampede Driver rounding that out. Feeding creatures.
I loved playing Archmage, by the way.
Me too.
The number of times, for instance, the number of times in draft that I would splash or seal really, but the amount of splashing for Archmage I did, I can't quit that card.
Yeah, that card was nice. We have fading creatures with activated abilities. We alluded to some of these earlier. Creatures with fading that also have activated abilities that require removing fading counters to use. Defender Invec, Jolting Merfolk, Phyrexian Prowler, Ancient Hydra, and Wood Ripper. Some highs here and some low lows.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Dude, you reacted so strong to the Wrathy.
The Phyrexian Prowler?
Yeah.
That one's pretty brutal. It's not even around that long to begin with.
Yeah.
And then, you can kind of save it, I guess, but not really because it's at the expense of a fading counter. I don't know.
Yeah.
Compared to Wood Ripper or Ancient Hydra, it's not quite the same.
And Jolting Merfolk? God, yeah. Maybe it's just speaking to my leaks, but I have written down the words the number 4 and then Jolting Merfolk in pieces of paper. So much of, when I was younger, I spent a lot of my life writing for Jolting Merfolk on paper.
Speaking of cards that I made a lot of deck lists with 4 copies of, the Seals. Common enchantments that can be sacrificed to have an effect of an iconic instant. We have Seal of Cleansing, Disenchant, Seal of Removal, Unsummon, Seal of Doom, Dark Banishing, Seal of Fire, Shock, and Seal of Strength, Giant Growth.
Yeah, and it's interesting that they, it's clearly a thing that they chose to make them all the same cost. And they picked an interesting selection for showing these aren't all just the same. Seal
of Doom is and Seal of Cleansing are on different. There's 3 1-mana ones.
No. But what I mean is that they're the same cost as the card, like Dark Banishing and Seal of Doom.
Yeah, sorry.
And Seal of Removal and Unsummon. And it's interesting because the difference between Unsummon and Seal of Removal and how they play, it's not the same as Shock and Seal of Fire, and it's not the same as Seal of Cleansing and Disenchant. And I do think some of these work better than others. I think that Seal of Cleansing is a far superior design to Seal of Doom.
I think Seal of Doom is by far the roughest one of the 5, even though it has the least tournament resume of the 5. Just because talk about something that's on board 0 mana that you're thinking about all the time. It doesn't get any less fun than my opponent has an option to just kill any creature that I play.
And I think Seal of Cleansing plays so meaningfully different than Disenchant and yet has enough overlap that there's a lot of really compelling gameplay there.
I also really appreciated the 5 cards in question that they are copying are all instants. So you have the feeling of investing on my own turn, which is something that doesn't come up with these cards. But then you have the optionality, you have card type interactions, whatever. I think this would really dampen the experience if they were copying sorceries, because you're already playing those on your main phase to begin with. So very, very cool cycle of cards here. Definitely has inspired a lot of stuff.
And as far as onboard tricks go, because they are a little onboard tricky, but at least you are paying a cost that's gone. Like even if you get blown out by Seal of Strength or Seal of Fire or even Seal of Removal, they're down the seal. You're making progress.
Yeah, you at least have, even if you made a mistake because you were not aware of the seal, you can at least tell yourself and your opponent a story of, well, I wanted to get the seal out of there. That's so different than just recursive things or things that don't go away or whatever.
Throw it away for nothing.
Yep. We have the Parallax enchantments. These are rares. They're global enchantments with fading 5 that can remove counters to exile resources, creatures, lands, cards in hand, and that's Parallax Wave, Parallax Tide, Parallax Nexus.
Definitely powerful, and more powerful than people realized at first, across the board. I mean, like, Parallax Wave, people didn't realize that it was going to be such a defining card. Like, it was, it's a good one, but they didn't realize how defining. And Parallax Tide, it's very niche, very narrow. Just like, the Parallax Nexus also. Niche, narrow, but such a dramatic effect to have temporarily and, buying yourself an opening. They don't play as replayable as a lot of other fading cards, like the replayability, because of how much it's a little fake. Parallax Tide does a great job of this, but most of, like, Parallax Tide and Parallax Nexus kind of make you just not be able to play the game. Whereas Parallax Wave changes the gameplay for a number of turns, and you feel a tension building. Every time you make a choice, every time you pull the trigger, you're reducing the amount of time until all hell's going to break loose.
Right. Something that I like about Parallax Nexus, I want to call out, because definitely the least heralded of the three. I really appreciate that it can activate instant speed. Because something that's very challenging with discard, obviously, is you don't want to do the draw step lock stuff. Going back to Alpha with Disrupting Scepter, they identified right away we don't want someone to be empty-handed, draw a card, and get hit by that. So Magic is really, and I believe correctly, conservative with the amount of instant speed discard that they have throughout the game's entire history. This gives you a little bit of playing with that fire, and it's not totally fake. There are moments where you are like clipping their draw step or whatever, but it's not forever. You have a little bit, you get a taste of it without it being, the new normal or locking your opponent out.
And it does matter because when you're making your opponent discard all their cards, it lets this discard spell still do something during that time. And then also it rewards you for having gone to the trouble, because you don't get to do this trick, quote unquote, unless you already mind twisted your opponent. So you had to do a lot to get to here.
Yes. I played a lot with Parallax Nexus in a variety of like FNM level standard decks that I brewed. And it's like, I can basically just use this as mind twist for a turn if I have a window to resolve something. Or if the game goes a certain way, then I can actually be locking them down for a considerable length of time. It wasn't very good, but it was scratching a bad spike itch for sure.
I mean, that's a real thing. When it's something you're so transparently forbidden from, like it was hard not, in the mid 90s and the early 90s, it was hard to not fantasize about 2 chains of Mephistopheles and a Howling Mine. That feels just like,
Yes. We have free spells, no alternate casting cost. Spells that are free if you have a land of its color and an opponent has an enemy color land. No need for another game action like returning an island to hand, tapping a creature, sacking a creature, etc. So these are just 0 mana if the basic land types align. Legacy players, you might recognize a few of these. Civi's Ruse, Submerge, Massacre, Mog Salvage, and Refreshing Rain.
Yeah. I mean, that's a powerful mix.
Submerge is an all-time really rough card to have at 0 mana, I think.
I'm a Submerge sympathizer.
In what? I mean, I play with Submerge a lot.
Certainly, I play with Submerge a lot too. And I do, and you know, just keeping it real, Submerge is a little too powerful. And it's not necessarily great how much it steps on literally the people playing green creatures, right?
Yeah.
But that is what it does. Mm-hmm. And I think that there is something dope about, like, having some of the color hosers actually show up in Vintage and in Legacy and powered formats. That's not nothing. And these cards were not as, they don't scale, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong, Submerge was unbelievable in Standard. It was great, right? But it's still just a 1-for-1 card, right? And it's not the same thing as, you know, as a Tarmogoyf or a Dark Confidant or like a card that takes over the game. Having a very efficient but very narrow reactive card. Not narrow. It's not that. It's not there. Not narrow.
I know what you're trying to say.
And the thing is, though, I think that Submerge is like, I think that there is a good thing for there to be Submerge and not just Perish.
Yes.
Like, I think that it being meaningful, the idea of wide versus tall and Submerge being an instant and Submerge, it is demoralizing on rate at times, you know. But I don't know, man. It is the epitome of a sideboard card that does what you want against specific people that you could like be willing to pay a price on, and it's not, I don't know.
And that distinction that you're calling out is also not fake, even in the context of, you know, historical Legacy formats where Submerge, extremely good against Tarmogoyf, pretty modest against elves, and Perish is the opposite of that. And so you actually are, it's not just fake which one you're picking. It is, even though they are theoretically going after the same stuff, not really in practice. One's so much better than the other, and vice versa. And
I do think there's something to Submerge being good against Mana Screw. When you're Mana Screwed, like Submerge helps buy you a little bit of time.
It's also very good against Mana Screw.
It is, unfortunately. But I guess I just mean that, like, Perish makes the game about Perish, whereas Submerge makes the game about whatever your other thing was. It just it subsidized you with a lot of rate, a lot of tempo. You know, it just gives you a Black Lotus against those people, but it does so in a way that feels like interactive. And
I like Massacre a lot as a design.
Absolutely.
That's one where it's like, if you're losing to it, there are definitely cards you can go grab that are fun and appealing and work on their own that make you better against it.
And Lynn Civvy being a 1/3 ain't an accident.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
once
you're going to go down, I mean, like, there is a real gameplay and a counterplay there, you know? Right. And I think that, like, Massacre is a much better implementation of this than Submerge, because I think that Massacre being sorcery speed is, like, a meaningful thing. Mm-hmm. And Submerge being a zero-cost instant kind of, like, takes a lot of wind out of the sails of any possible counterplay. And I also think that it's a very real thing. -2/-2 to everything, and not just white creatures, but -2/-2 to everything. It's a powerful effect, and you can make real choices that lead, you know, if you choose to play an Anthem, it completely reshapes the game.
Yeah.
And it gives you incentive to play creatures that are medium instead of just small. And it gives you hope. And I think Massacre is a awesome design.
Yeah, and going back again to, you know, years of Legacies past, like, you have Sarah Avenger in your Death and Taxes deck. And it's like, what's going on there? There's a couple different reasons, but there's also just turning the knob a little bit in terms of helping you against Massacre.
I'm telling you, Massacre as a kid, really, when I was a kid, or a young man anyway, I really felt like there was more justice in the world. The first time that I massacred a Merfolk deck that used Tundras, where it felt like Tundra not just being better than Island, You know, and obviously you can always go back to Blood Moon and all that, but it always felt to me like that's kind of like this weird fake asterisk, not fake, but it felt like it wasn't organic the same way that punishing a Merfolk deck that uses Tundras, like, ooh, that to me really scratched an itch where I was like, there are trade-offs.
Yes. Common alternate casting cost spells. Common spells that can be cast for no mana if you control a basic land of the corresponding type and perform another specific action. Lash Knife, Daze, Mind Swords, Downhill Charge, and Sky Shroud Cutter.
Sky Shroud Cutter did a lot of work on that list.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it is wild how many cards you can play without paying their casting costs they did in this block.
It is.
You know?
You're starting with Rebels and Mercenaries at a baseline. And then there's so much pitching and alternate costs and 0 mana if the lands line up the right way. I mean, I wonder how much of that is trying to give people the feeling that stuff isn't just powered down, like giving them the 0 mana experience.
Oh, totally.
But in ways that are not, you know, Tolarian Academy Time Spiral, but like Submerge and Daze and all that, which are really, really strong cards, but they're much more about discrete interactions and then we move on rather than, and now you're dead all in one turn.
Yeah. The fact that they're not all so explosive, but they're not all purely reactive either. There's so many illusions going on, and I think it's a well-crafted mix of illusions.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wasted mana in, like, the first 2 sets of this block really leave you in spots where you just sometimes are like, oh, I played my overcosted 4-cost card for free, and then just had 2 or 3 mana sitting on the table and didn't do anything with it.
Right.
You know, if only there was a mechanic that could reward me for having, you know, a couple extra mana laying around.
Yeah, seriously. It's that's the, like, really would be, you know, the bow on top of this block of like, you know, I am doing so much for 0. If there was just some way to make my opponent's cards worse if I'm in this position.
But dude, the alternate cost cards, I will say it gets a little confusing because of how many of them have related but not the same conditions. Like the idea that I care about, like we care about my forests, and as a result, I can make a card cost. I can give you 6 life to play my card for free. Or if I have a forest, but you have a swamp, I can make my card that makes me gain 6 life free. It is weird keeping track of which one is like also cares about your swamp or not. Like I know, like I remember a bunch of times where people played Reverent Silence for free when their opponent didn't have a swamp. Just thinking of the gain 6 life one, you know, the Refreshing Rain.
Maybe that's an issue with Reverent Silence plus Refreshing Rain.
Definitely. That's particularly the worst one. That's the one where they actually, you know.
Yeah.
But a sweet mix of, you know, it's not all purely reactive. You know, make some tokens, destroy some stuff, interact. There's some cool stuff here.
Totally. All right. Uncommon alternate casting cost spells. Uncommon spells that can be cast for no mana if you control a basic land of the corresponding type and perform another specific action. We have Angelic Favor, Civi's Valor, Ensnare, Dark Triumph, Mog Alarm, and Reverent Silence.
Yeah. A little confusing, but yes.
Yeah.
You know, like the idea of if you have a mountain, you can sack it. I mean, but also they stack in weird ways sometimes where you're like, okay, I can bounce my islands instead of paying the cost, but then I can't play my card for free that's free, even though the condition is met because now I don't have island anymore.
Yeah, I feel like this element of the set could use a little bit of editing. Like, I think the Submerge Massacre stuff is pretty clear and clean and whatever. But once we're getting into this like 3-level parlay of conditions to do whatever, I think
and the
improvements
cycle
could be made by getting rid of it.
The cycle splitting in so many, it's like, okay, so there's a vertical cycle of free spells, and there's this theme of you need to have the right basic land. But then some of them are color hosers that care about your opponent's color of basic land. But some of them don't care about that, but have alternate costs that you have to pay. But some are just free, and it ends up being kind of like, and even the alternate costs all splinter into different directions. They're not all the same alternate cost.
Silken Fist creatures. White creatures that untap when they become blocked. The Fighter and the Order.
Yeah, like the Gust Cloaks.
Yeah. Well, I think the Gust Cloaks are they get pulled out of combat.
Yeah.
These are just...
Oh, yeah. Conditional vigilance.
Yeah.
That's what my 1/3 needs is conditional vigilance.
All right, now we're on to the laccoliths. Can someone give me a normal red creature in this block? Our show notes here said red beast creatures with a very clean and clear ability. What they actually do is when they become blocked, they can deal their power to another target and deal no combat damage this turn.
Yeah, which is a thing you can do. It's not great on low rarity cards. I remember a lot of times that it didn't play great in limited because of how much, I know that I would play against people and then they would do some stuff with their laccolith and then it just wouldn't work out for them. Like they just, it wouldn't produce a good game state and they would just bin their cards. And then other times I would have the laccolith and then I would just annihilate them because they So I think that if you're going to do that kind of thing, it probably wasn't meant for low rarity.
Yeah, one rare in a set. Yeah, sure, I buy that for this era. But yeah, 4 of them that's a lot of laccoliths.
They also don't play. It's not like there's this interesting mix of how they play.
No. All right, moving along to another beloved red mechanic, the Flowstone spells. Variety of red spells that grant a creature or multiple creatures the Flowstone +1/-1 at different rates. We got the Strike, the Surge, and the Slide.
Yeah, I like a lot more of the Flowstone cards they made in later sets that were homages, because this is a cool mechanic, and it's a cool way to give red access to this kind of a thing, which was a little revolutionary at the time. The idea of a red sweeper that didn't just do damage, it was a real thing, particularly in a world that has things like 2/1 flying pro red.
There's also something nice about you can actually try to build I have big creatures, and so you're just dead. It's not just a sweeper.
Absolutely, and it manifested in the gameplay.
Yeah.
Blastoderm becoming a 9/1?
Mm-hmm. All their jump blockers are gone?
Yes.
They're dead.
Yeah.
They're dead. Okay. So we have the completion of the voices cycle. Those of you from Urza Block might remember the pro color ones. We had blue, black, red, and green throughout that block, and then we have Voice of Truth here, rounding it out.
And it was a whole thing. I remember when when you've got the pro black and the pro red one, you don't think anything of it. You're like, oh, white just color hoses a little bit. And then when they pick up the blue and the green over time, obviously people are making it's like, oh, why don't we have the white one? And other people, oh, you can't have the white one. It's white. White doesn't hate itself.
No, it protects itself from anything, including other white cards. It's dope.
And now here we are.
We have White Ward in Alpha as precedent. They had all 5 at the beginning. So, All right. We have the continuation of Weatherlight Location legendary lands. These are rare legendary lands that hit a particular story beat throughout the Weatherlight story. We have Core Haven here, alongside previous additions to Fairy's Isle, Volrash Stronghold, Keldon Necropolis, and Yavimaya Hollow. Sweet.
Core Haven's a powerful card, too.
It is a powerful card. And
I wouldn't describe its gameplay as A+, but as far as this thing goes, I do really like that it has more opportunity cost than, Maze of Ith types or whatever.
Yeah. We have some matching pairs here, Lawbringer, Lightbringer, Stronghold Biologist, Stronghold Machinist, Rackling Viceling, and a couple mirror pairs here in Netter Endal, Bola Warrior, and Death Pit Offering overlaid terrain.
Dude, Death Pit Offering, that's a sweet design.
That is a sweet design.
That is a sweet design. I love how it's got relatively few words despite how much implication and how satisfying it is to think about. And the gameplay is real. When you play with it, it's real. When you build with it, it's real. And even when you build to it, you're not building in a way to make it so that its thing doesn't do, its cost doesn't do anything. You still got to decide when you're going to do it. How are you going to do it? and it's satisfying. It's obviously its rate wouldn't hold up today, but in context, its rate was good enough that it was like a real thing. People really did it.
Yeah. Yeah. That was another one where I got my creative juices flowing quite a bit trying to think about it. And it is kind of a nice thing to do in the mercenary set too. Cause it's like, well, I can rebuild my army so quickly and everything I have is so bad anyway that like, even if I have to give up a little bit, the bonus actually turns these things into real threats.
And it's with the mercenaries, it's not like you just want to rush out at the beginning. You know, the mercenaries are really great at go down the chain. So there's something really sweet about, I'm going to play Death Pit Offering. You know, I played a couple removal spells and played Death Pit Offering, and then I played some mercenary dude who's going to start building me a team.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even lose anything, you know?
Yeah.
That's actually one of the cards that I reference when, when talking with game designers and trying to like encourage them to build rare cards or uncommon cards. Not even, not every game uses the same rarity, but when you're building cards that are for your whatever game, any game, when you're building cards for your game and you want to have when you want to have cards that are about something, that's such a good example of a card that is actually about something. It's not just a couple abilities stapled together. It's not just a puzzle that if you can solve it does nothing. It's not just paint by numbers. It's open-ended. How you can do it. It's satisfying. It's visceral. It's evocative. It's flavorful. It's, to me, it is an all-time banger for good build-around designs.
And not a design that, because of all those things that you're describing, not a design that you would just come up with off the top of your head.
No, it doesn't make itself.
Yeah, it's a very bizarre pair of things, right? But all the stuff that you're talking about adds up to being a masterpiece, even though it's not an intuitive design by any means.
Not at all. To me, it's literally on my all-time list for best build-arounds. I think that's a great case study for anybody who wants to learn more about game design. Now, it doesn't even have to be card games either. The notion, just really reflecting on what's going on with Death Pit Offering was definitely a key, a great way to get better at game design.
Totally. I have similar stories about that card, just thinking about how fun it is to think about Magic.
Yes.
And then is there a way to get that experience into other people's hands in different ways? Because obviously any one design, even as good as that one, there's going to be a market for it. Not everyone's going to buy in. But what are the other versions of that sort of experience that's like, oh, wow, there's like so much to think about here. It's cool. Very cycle dense set. That will do it for the cycles, and we'll be back momentarily with trivia. Welcome back, folks. Trivia time. Top of the list here, the set featured Mike Wong's invitational card, Rootwater Thief. Wong won the invitational in Barcelona in February 99. Any experience playing with this card?
Yeah. Costing mana definitely took it a lot out of a lot of spots where I would have played it. I don't think it's like a great card to make good. It had a couple moments though.
Yeah.
Because there were some decks that it really disrupted them to like take one specific card out of their deck. And, it's a joke, but it really does have good types.
Yeah. That my experience was incorrectly having this in a lot of my sideboards. The set contains Ascendant Evankar, which is notably the first card to represent the same legendary character, Krovax the Curse, as a previous card following a major change in the character storyline. R&D avoided using the name Krovax Ascendant Evankar to prevent confusion with the legend rule if both cards were in play. The policy was changed in Plane Shift with Airtie the Corrupted. Love that. That's a big step forward in storytelling. It's like, here's the legend, but it's different this time. Nemesis has no reprints, introduces no new creature types, and only includes one functional reprint. I'm going to take umbrage here with our note writer here. The card called out as a functional reprint, Spineless Thug of Craven Knight and Young Wei Recruits, but Spineless Thug is a mercenary, and that is a good type, so not exactly a functional reprint. Okay, ban and restricted cards. Lin Civi Divine Hero was banned in Masques Block constructed in June of 2000. you have a lot more familiarity playing with this set at a high level. And Lin Civi was one of the impetuses for eventually changing the legend rules to what we have today. For those of you who are unaware, back then, each of us could, between the two of us, only have one copy. So if I played my Lin Civi first, Jabin literally can't play his Lin Civi until mine's gone or something else has happened. Do you think that Lin Civi would have been palatable had the legend rule been what it is now back then? Or do you think that this was just too much no matter what?
Those are my only two options? Because I got a definite C.
Good.
I think the problem wasn't even... Okay, it would have played better if the legend rule was more like today, but that's not even the real issue. Mm-hmm. I think it's not that Lin Civi was too much. I think that too many other things were not enough. I think that Lin Civi actually... This is kind of weird, but I actually think Lin Civi played well. I just think it was not enough other stuff played well. I think that mana was too bad. Mm-hmm. And I think that had really bad incentives for diversity in the game. I think that there's a card we'll talk about later, wildly cut out 90% of the space. You could have just not did that. And then if you had done a thing like Lin Civi, if you had done 4 other things like Lin Civi in their own different ways, I think that it would have played really well. It would have been a good experience. It would be a better experience with the new legend rule, but I think you could have got around it because I think as long as there's enough satisfying ways to break that parity. And I think there weren't as many as I would have liked in white, and it created kind of like your incentive is to go all in and just be a maniac and try to win the coin flip. But no, I don't think everything would have worked out with the new legend rule.
Gotcha.
And I think the gameplay would have been lame if Lin Civi wasn't... I think if Lin Civi wasn't strong, the format would be worse.
Interesting.
I think that a lot of other things needed to be better. That's all.
Days was banned in Pauper in May of 2019.
Sorry, I don't mean to just harp on Lin Civi, but I do want to point out why I think Lin Civi played much better than it might seem, even if it's busted, right? Mm-hmm. In context, because everything else is so weak. A 1/3 with an activated ability that costs mana that requires you to make a decision, that's not just the same kind of card that's always good. And this is a card that it's not nothing attacking with Lin Civi. It's a real thing that would happen. And Lin Civi's interaction with Anthems is interesting. And Lin Civi being a 1/3 is an incredible stat line. And Lin Civi breaking the formula with regards to, you've had all these other rebels that are recruiting for a mana more than the thing, 2 mana more than the thing. Lin Civi recruiting hyper efficiently and really warping the experience around a point that people can interact with reliably. It's awesome. There's a thing there, and the amount that Lin Civi lets you live the dream, like the rebels, there is this dream of I want to go all the way up. Lin Civi gives you enough juice to really do it, to actually sometimes play with a 3/3 flyer, or to play with a Defiant Vanguard, or to play, you just put more one-offs in your deck that were actually kind of cool to tutor up because Lin Civi made it so that you could do it well enough to actually be worth the trouble.
Yeah, and you will just naturally draw those cards on another time anyway. So it's not fake. Like it's in your hand, and then the game goes on, and you pay your 3/3 flyer for 5 or whatever. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Days banned in Pauper in May of 2019. I'm not that familiar with Pauper, but that ban does not surprise me. Moving on to notable cards. Now, a lot of the ones that are on the list are cards we've already talked about at length. Want to give some shine to some stuff that we haven't really talked about. So in white, how do you feel about Blinding Angel?
Love it.
You do?
Yeah, why not? I think that it's a little repetitive. I shouldn't say love it. I don't think it's some A+ thing or whatever. But I think that as far as this kind of thing goes, it's getting the game over with. It's progressing the game. It's putting you at danger where you actually have to attack. Mm-hmm. It has counterplay. It has. It's a card that gives you hope. It makes it feel like there's times where you just play Blinding Angel and then just take your medicine. You're in control, but you tap out and you play Blinding Angel and you just hope they can't do anything about it. Mm-hmm. And then you just take your medicine, you get beat down, but you're not dead if you can just survive. And that's to say nothing of blocking with Blinding Angel.
Oh yeah.
That's like you're living when you're deciding whether or not to block with Blinding Angel. And it's so dope. The amount of gameplay that emerged from a text box that can lock somebody, despite the fact that it's a text box that locks somebody out. It's evocative. It's a great card to be an angel. It's very attractive to novices. It delivers on what it promises it will. And I actually really like Blinding Angel. I really do. I think that it's clean and it's a great top down. There's a lot to like, I think, as far as cards that make your opponent never be able to attack again.
I just remember being not very good at Magic at that time and losing to that a lot, and maybe an indictment on me of not being able to figure out how to work around it. But I think that also has so much to do with the surrounding cards in the blue-white control being so... like Blinding Angel is not the issue there, but it's the thing that you can point to as...
Yeah. I think like Counterspell and Daze and Accumulated Knowledge and like there's stuff that...
Story Circle.
There's stuff that's secret. Well, I don't even mind Story Circle as much.
No, it's just one more bit of it.
I love it. You're such a red mage.
No, I don't. Story Circle, it's like, no, it's 3 mana and they had to pay white. It's like, when you get used to cop red, you get a certain Stockholm syndrome of like, oh, this is like pretty fair, I guess, relative to what I'm used to, even if it's, not really beatable either.
But so, yeah, what were your thoughts on Blinding Angel? Less like cooler, I take it.
A little bit cooler, and I think a lot of it just has to do with my memories at the time. The generic blue-white control stuff was pretty good around this era as like a standard level deck that people could just play. It got a lot worse when Invasion Block entered the mix because then you had Fact or Fiction and a lot of the powerful cards from Saga rotated out. And I think that something that happens a lot with weaker players or people who are building up their understanding, it's really easy to point to the card that's killing you or point to the card with the most dramatic effect, when in reality it was, no, you lost this game on turn 4 when you did nothing and your opponent didn't have to use their mana counterspell and they got to Fact or Fiction. That's what actually beat you. The Blinding Angel could have been it could have been Air Elemental. It would have been roughly the same thing. But the experience of it at the time for me was so, like, this is so frustrating. I'm locked out. This is, whatever. But I think all the things you're saying about it are true as far as this sort of play pattern goes. This is a very good execution of it.
I think it's one of those cards that secretly makes the whole world have more fun when it's not even involved.
Yeah.
Because I think that, like, I remember in that era how many people would play things like, for instance, Mono White Rebels, and it's just all proactive. And then they got maybe they got Reverence, Mantra or +1/+1, they got the Rally,
yeah.
But like, if you just play the straightforward proactive Rebel deck, you can't beat Blinding Angel. And once you go down the path of playing with any interaction, we start playing a different kind of game where you're actually interacting. And I think that's cool. And I think that like playing a red-green deck that's just so bash your face, it's different if you actually go to the trouble of playing with some interaction. And I think that Blinding Angel is an organic way to get people to play with a little bit of interaction.
Yeah. Moving on to blue, Accumulated Knowledge. Banger. Banger. It was, still is kind of like, I almost feel like I saw a Legacy or Standard. They printed this in Standard and there was a list playing it or whatever.
Yeah.
Like its rate holds up today. It's a little, my opinion, not the best thing to be great just because the mirror match involving this card is can be a little numbing. But assuming that it was only counting yourself, I think this design's just awesome.
I think also it would have been, I do think it would have been cooler if it was made before Intuition.
Yeah.
Because I do don't get me wrong, it was an easy thing because people instantly were just like, well, this is a powerful thing in powered formats, is Intuition AK. I think it would have been a nice thing to emerge later. But yeah, I think this is a disproportionately enjoyable and satisfying card. It leads to some power spikes. I don't love the mirror match implications, as you mentioned. But I've definitely had a disproportionate amount of fun playing. Like, this is some play with your food stuff too. Like this is a fun way, you know.
So I have a little story here. Neutral Ground used to have the grudge match qualifiers against your move games. So the way this tournament series worked was there would be tournaments up in New York City and tournaments up in Boston. And if you won one of these Saturday tournaments, you qualified for the main event, which had the stars from each store playing. And then the winner of those two tournaments played one another for like who is the ruler of the Mid-Atlantic and New England. So my friend and I were very into playing mono blue control when this set came out. Thieving Magpie, a million counter spells, whatever. This deck was, fairly popular, what it is. And we played Accumulated Knowledge in this deck. And obviously, if you have it in the mirror and your opponent doesn't, they're way behind. So we get up to Neutral Ground, and this is when Michael Flores's Napster deck is making some inroads here. And of course, this being New York City, Michael Flores' stomping ground, there's a lot of mono black Napster among the better players in the room. We're talking Duress, Yawgmoth's Will, a Vampiric Tutor package, like good stuff kind of deck that had some bursty combos and can play offense or defense depending on what the matchup was.
Vampiric Tutor,
Yeah,
with a
Vampiric
package,
Tutor.
a nice package to set things up.
So round one, I play whatever happens. My buddy is in the mono blue mirror match against Zvi Moshowitz. And Zvi has Brainstorm in his deck because it's way better against mono black. You get to hide your key stuff from discard spells and maybe win the fight or whatever. So turn two, my friend casts Accumulated Knowledge. And Zvi's like, oh, you're just not worried about the mono black matchup? And Zvi casts a Brainstorm. And I'm sitting there thinking, we got him. We actually, he's going to win. He's going to, the card choice we've made mattered. And we're going to beat Zvi. This is so cool.
I hope he AK'd you.
No, he didn't. No. And then in game three, his Zvi's treachery got annulled. Yeah. I still think about that. I didn't even play.
You're the hero.
I didn't even play. That wasn't even me. And I think about that all the time. All right. Days. Another notable blue card.
That is a notable blue card.
The card's really good. Really good.
Days is fun.
Yes.
Yes, it's powerful, but Days is fun. That is a fun card to be that.
Yeah, Force Spike too. I mean, all those cards have just in terms of cards that create the best screenshots from competitive high-level power formats, those cards are like the top of the list. I have friends when Force Spike is in the Vintage Cube, I just get photos just every 4 or 5 hours of whatever getting Force Spiked. Days does a lot of that too.
Yes.
Parallax Tide we went over. Rising Waters.
Yeah.
It's possible this... I'm trying to think of a card that was this ruinous to its block constructed format that was not banned.
So, Rising Waters, 3 and a blue Winter Orb. It is, but on an enchantment. It is, it's in this weird case where it was so bad it was so bad of an influence, and it was given a perpetual green light pass because it was so good against Rebels, and Rebels was so overpowered. Mm-hmm. And the rationale was, at least it's so good against Rebels that less people will play Rebels, and then there's this paper, rock, scissors of Rising Water, Rebels, other.
Yeah.
But that stuff was so fake, in part because it wasn't first of all, it wasn't that good against Rebels. The Rebel decks are so strong, and the blue cards are not that good. But it was so ruinous to everything else you would try to do against Rebels. Eventually a black-green deck emerged as a third, because you need something else in the metagame for the paper, rock, scissors. But Rising Waters exacerbated the mana screw problems, the lack of fixing, the making the game banning 90% of the cards for no reason. If there had not been Rising Waters, first of all, you could ban Lin Civi and have everything be at like a fine power level. But if there hadn't been Rising Waters, you could actually try to fight Rebels a different way. Mm-hmm. And I think Rising Waters was just ruinous, absolutely ruinous.
Yeah, and it's funny, again, fast forwarding a little bit to the next set, the number, setting aside the Winter Orb, it's just not really a thing you're supposed to be doing. The number of cards that are like, yeah, this card makes you tap out. That's all over the place in the next set. Like mandatory tap all of your lands as part of the cost of this thing. And in this set and throughout the block, the amount of free stuff that's going on, like it is really leaning in to elements of the block that already exist and would emerge organically anyway, but in just the most punishing and unfun way possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I think also the amount that Rising Waters is forever is so different than Tangle Wire and Parallax Tide.
Yeah.
I mean, it's already weird to have this much this much mono blue land destruction. But this whole set has so many dynamic moments and transient things where it's like, this is the moment where this is free, or this is the moment where this is powerful, or this is the moment where there's going to be a couple turns where things are like this and then the tension will be released. Rising Waters is forever.
Yeah. Root Water Thief, we went over Seal of Removal and Submerge.
God, I loved maybe it's a leak, but I've always liked Bounce. I really enjoyed Seal of Removal.
I played a lot of that in Mono Blue Control.
I loved because I've always loved Unsummon, but Unsummon just wasn't quite priced to move. And I found that Seal of Removal was it was so satisfying to have the ability to bounce my own stuff with the shields down. That feels so disproportionately good.
Yeah. And there's also something nice about, I wasn't going to do anything on turn one anyway.
Yes.
And somewhere down the line, maybe I wouldn't have enough mana to do everything that I want to do and unsummon.
And it's got good types.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Being an enchantment instead of just another instant.
The number of seal removal plus powder keg plus masticore battling off against just Ramosian Sergeant. Like if they activate this thing once, it's over because then they get something with 2 toughness and then they're just off and running. You can't manage it with anything. So the amount of, all right, they have turn 1 Ramosian Sergeant. How am I going to try to basically never let them untap with it and 3 mana? It's a hard game and it's not for everyone, but that's when I started to get some of my competitive bearings under me.
That was such a better way to do it too than Rising Waters, Seal of Removal. Okay.
Waterfront Bouncer, Withdraw.
Okay, good job.
Great, everyone. Good job. Black, I said an Evan car was a fun card and something of a reanimation target in less powerful times.
That guy was a fun guy to interact with the Rebels too. It sounds funny, but Defiant Falcon versus Ramosan Lieutenant, that's a thing.
Yeah.
It's,
Totally. Rat the Assassin, Seal of Doom, Massacre. Red, Flame Rift.
A card near and dear to your heart.
Might win an award somewhere down the line.
Have to imagine. That's one of the cards I most associate with you.
2 deal 8. I'm a big fan of what gets me excited as a Magic player is very early on in the game playing a card that's like, one of us has got to go. I'm not really even that picky. If it's me, that's fine, but we cannot take that long to do this. I got other stuff going on.
Dude, Flame Rift is one of those cards not one of those cards. It's literally I think Flores wrote about a deck list that you played, and it had Flame Rift, and it was so just because it's one thing playing Flame Rift at the time when there's just a shortage of powerful stuff going on, and you're like, well, you just need some cards, and there's just not that many options for this. That's cool. That was already cool. You playing Flame Rift in a more powerful format later, that to me was inspiring to see a man mean it like that. That was like standing on principle in a way that was like, and it wasn't fake. It wasn't like it was for nothing. It was just like, dear God, this is a man who knows who he is.
Have you ever had your mono red burn deck beat Leyline of Sanctity? I have. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it.
Yes.
No, this is for everyone. Everyone sits at the buffet.
Yes.
Everyone gets a taste. Flowstone Slide, Mod Catcher super fun. Seal of Fire and Stronghold Gambit. Another weirdo that has bizarrely had some legacy tournament history to it. Moving on to green, aforementioned Blastoderm, could talk about that all day. Reverent Silence, nice little sideboard card for some reanimation decks and such to defeat Leyline of the Void. Got Rocks, and Sapperling Burst.
Rocks doesn't rock that much.
No, Rocks does not rock.
Sapperling Burst rocks.
Yeah. That's another fun one with haste going down the line a little bit.
Definitely, but Sapperling Burst is also, I think that's just that's a fun way to add, like, you don't want to just have every kind of one of these add like a third layer, right? Like, it's like, okay, it's only going to last this many turns, but you have the option to make it last a turn less to get something else, right?
Yeah.
But the idea that you get something else and then also it changes the implication of what everything is, it actually comes together in a fun way with Sapperling Burst.
Yeah.
And even though it seems a little overwhelming at first thinking through the tree, it collapses down into the same permutations. It's not like Ravager where this is a NP. This problem is NP difficult. I mean,
yeah, and it's another one of the cards that I just remember someone activates it, like they take it down, and both players are having a better time. It's like I'm making a decision, I'm getting something out of my card. You're like, yeah, if I can weather the storm, then I get out from under this thing, and my opponent's paying for some immediacy here. Love that card.
Another fun one to chump block.
Yes. Artifacts. I don't know how notable many of these are, but we got Beeple's Portal.
Besides Tanglewire, yeah.
Predator Flagship. I didn't play very much.
That one was notable.
I did not play very much limited at the time, but my understanding was that was in conversation for best rare in the set, or best card in the set for limited.
Binding Angel is pretty good.
Yeah. Rackling, Tanglewire, Viceling, and then lands here. We got Core Haven and one that I probably played more than I should have.
Brass Edge?
Terrain Generator.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I did Wrath's Edge every now and again.
You just Brass Edge the correct amount, whereas Terrain Generator was a leak?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
My mono blue deck could use like a 27th and a half land. I'll play a Wrath's Edge, Terrain Generator was like...
Were you Terrain Generating with Gush at all?
No, I wasn't doing anything good with it.
What were you Terrain Generating? Just to ramp out your awful 6-drop?
Just to generate terrain. Like, look what I'm doing over here. Look, we all learn at different curves. But that was a card I wanted to call out as something I have some
I played Terrain Generator. It was definitely more often in Gush decks, but
that does it for notable cards. We'll be back here in a moment with our awards. Welcome back to the Resleevables Nemesis edition. We are in our new awards segment. If you weren't around for Portal 3 Kingdoms, we've made some calls here and shifting some things around. So we have new awards, and we both have generated our lists separately. No consultation with one another. So we're just going to go, starting with strongest card in the set for low-powered formats. That means, your average standard format. What do you think is the strongest card in the set?
So I'm going based on the context of, like, I said Lin Civi. And obviously, if you just throw Lin Civi in a set without Rebels, it's not good. But the implication is you wouldn't be putting this in a set unless there were Rebels. And if you're going to support it as well as the Rebels are supported in this block card.
Okay, my answer goes to Parallax Wave.
Great, that's a good answer.
I think, Both those
I
cards are
get
super
honorable
sick.
mention to Parallax Wave. I think Parallax Wave is very powerful in a lot of formats, and it might even be that Parallax Wave is like more powerful in more formats, but the amount that Lin Civi is more powerful by.
Yeah.
But no, that's a great answer.
All right. Next award.
And
sorry.
there's one other one that I won't say yet, but secretly, you can't just give the same award to the same card every single award.
Yeah.
So we'll get back to that one.
All right. Strongest card for high-powered formats. Your answer.
Man. So this is a fake answer.
Okay.
Because I can't give the same award to every single card.
All right.
But my fake answer is
It wasn't going to be Lin Civi.
no, it wasn't. No. It's so I'm torn between Massacre and Submerge,
Okay.
but probably Submerge is stronger.
Okay. I gave it to Days.
That's the real answer.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Days is the real answer, hands down.
Okay. Coolest commander card. I'll go first here. Stronghold Gambit. Let's roll some. Let's just see what we're all up to over here. And the fact that ties work in favor of the people who bought in. Awesome.
Yeah. I feel like your answer is better than mine. But I also just like simple stuff sometimes. And it wouldn't hold up today, but I liked Seal of Cleansing in multiplayer. Like, I think there's something very sweet about, I have this card on the table. I don't have to like telegraph anything. I don't have to hold anything up, and you can just keep respecting it. And it doesn't have to come to this. It doesn't have to be you.
Yeah. The seals do a really good job with that.
And
That's
Seal of Cleansing in particular was such a satisfying one to not use. I mean, to use, but not use, to have him play, and, because of the implication.
Because everyone's looking at all of their targets in their hand at all times and weighing this in a way that doesn't really happen with like seal of removal or seal of fire or whatever.
Oh, and I mean, the stakes are so high with a timely zero-cost disenchant. And people would try to curry favor with me. Like, I have an answer to their problem.
Yeah.
And it's kind of awesome, the moments that would be led by, like, I miss that kind of element of multiplayer games that we play. And sometimes we play games bigger than, this is the pre-Commander era, before Commander even, but playing multiplayer games with like 4 to 8 people, I really enjoyed sometimes. You don't want it all the time, but having that experience of, we had a long weekend of hyper competitive gameplay, and now we switch to people are just cutting loose, being silly at 2 a.m, playing one giant big game, and there's some political intrigue. Yeah, so Seal Cleansing, I have fond memories of playing multiplayer with that card.
Favorite art in the set?
So it's not my all-time favorite art set as a whole, but I give the award to Plague Witch, but with a honorable mention for the Sneaky Homunculus.
So I share that viewpoint. The art is a little too, it's like kind of somehow both weird and repetitive.
Yeah.
Like it's just a lot of shapes.
There's a lack of relatable human faces other than all the same face. Like there's zoom in close on the face on the person, but a lot of the action sequences are baffling, and they'll be busy, but like I do get that what you mean of it's somehow both repetitive and also weird.
Yeah.
So
I gave it to my favorite piece of art in the set is Stronghold Zeppelin.
Okay.
And that is, first of all, it's just a piece of art. And I like the framing, the composition of the shot. But there's also that's like a normal thing that I can identify in the set where I feel like we could maybe use a little bit more.
I will say about Plague Witch, I'm glad that they eventually did the creature type update. It was so brutal because this is before creatures had like multiple types.
Yeah.
It's so brutal that Plague Witch wasn't an elf. Like it's clearly an elf. If you look at the artwork, it is definitely an elf. But I love the color palette of Plague Witch. Like I think that there's a really pleasing aesthetic there that taps into an element of black that anyway, I just shout out to Plague Witch.
All right.
Underrated cosplay character too.
That's a you're probably not going to get a lot of, I recognize that one.
No, what? If anybody If anybody's ever cosplayed Plague Witch, let me know.
Yeah,
or
let us know
does,
in the- let us know in
let
the
me know.
comments.
That's Plague Witch awesome. Hell yeah.
All right. So next award, biggest design success. This is not speaking to an individual card, but rather a mechanic or trend or whatever, a through line that we see.
Yeah, I wonder which mechanic.
Well, I mean, I didn't write a mechanic.
I did.
All right, go for it.
Fading.
Okay.
Dude, I think that the execution of Fading, the gameplay, it's not just sucking it up and actually making a keyword in a block that for some reason doesn't have any keywords. I think that Fading plays really well, and they did such an amazing job, like a way above expectation job of making a diversity of gameplay experiences of compelling cards, making cards that are about something, making them not all about the same thing, making the puzzles somewhat generalized but at the same time novel and meaningful. The amount of sweet success designs they made, from Ancient Hydra to Blastoderm to Saproling Burst, but also, going in these other directions, like Parallax Wave, and the amount that it shows up in Constructed and Limited, it's not all the same thing. The decisions, Jolting Merfolk, it's not like it's executed A+, but it is, in context, a masterpiece and made the games about some interesting stuff that it would have been even more interesting if Rising Waters wasn't around.
Yeah, my award, or what I think is the greatest design success, is actually very similar to yours, even though it is described very differently. That there's a lot of stuff to think about, and it's not super prescriptive. There's just stuff that has its own experience that's different from game to game, that they're built around where different people can approach it different ways. There's just a lot of things to sink your teeth into in here. And the fading stuff is absolutely part of that too. I mean, there's, do you want to use Parallax Wave as a way of protecting your own stuff and blinking, or clearing out blockers, or a blend of the two, and that's all just like different from game to game. So yeah, related, I would say, even though different answers. All right, what do you think is the biggest design failure?
So even though we're supposed to be talking about a mechanic, it's definitely Rising Waters to me. I think that the failure of 90% of the set, if I'm not going to say Rising Waters, then I guess the biggest failure is to not make enough other stuff as good as Rebels besides Rising Waters. Like, I think that if they would have made, if Blastoderm and Saproling Burst, and obviously that stuff showed up eventually, right? Like, as things changed. But I think that if they had promoted Mercenaries and the red-green fading stuff and just a few other strategies, and definitely not Rising Waters. Rising Waters banned everything else, but also they didn't push other stuff up. And to me, that was the failing, is that they didn't go hard. Like, they didn't make enough they weren't bold enough with the other stuff, which was exacerbated by, all their margin of error was eaten up by Rising Waters.
Yeah, my vote goes to too much rate in hosers and unrelated stuff, which is Rising Waters as part of that. Just set aside Lin Civi, obviously that's kind of its own thing, but the Mercenaries, for example, the fading cards are not weak as a collection of cards.
No,
but they're just not close to specifically Rising Waters, which is nothing to do about anything. The set doesn't have any.
Well, they certainly support Rising Waters, but it's weird that it just shits on the entire set and the mechanics and
yeah.
It's ostensibly about something insofar as there's this Days Gush sort of bounce my own islands thing, so it's kind of like a third order synergy, but it's so unwise.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're talking about so much of the power being Massacre and Submerge.
Yeah, and how far down the list do you have to go of stack rank the cards in the set from strongest to weakest? How far down do you have to go before you list a black creature with the type Mercenary?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that sort of thing.
Yeah, I guess maybe Mercenaries is part of my answer too, though. I mean, that's really just the perfect execution of, so I guess not Rising Waters as much as Mercenaries itself is emblematic of the wasted opportunity to make something else good like Rebels. It's a thing that people would want to be good. it wouldn't take that much to get a niche for it. It's so weird that, I mean, even if you're going to miss on purpose in the first set, it's so weird to double down even more, to make the rebels even better after they were already good, and to make the mercenaries still not good.
Yeah.
At least there's like a more pleasing mix, but they're just not good.
All right. What is the card that you have won with the most in the set?
That I've won with the most?
Mm-hmm.
Days. This is where I use the Days spot. I have won a lot of games with Days.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Flame Rift here, which, like, honestly, I don't even... It honestly might be Days in terms of sheer volume of games, but in terms of flair for the dramatic, I'm going to give it to Flame Rift. All right, what's the card in the set you've lost to the most?
So if we're going to talk about sheer number of games that I've lost where this card was involved on my opponent's side, then it's probably Seal of Fire.
Okay.
And plus, Seal of Fire when I've played with it. But the card that has lost me the most games because of it might be Tanglewire.
It's a really good answer. Yeah, card that when it has appeared in the game has caused its caster to lose the most. Card I've lost to the most by far in this set is Sapperling Burst. Talk about just kind of wrong place, wrong time in terms of my arc as a competitive player. I could not beat this thing, and I built a lot of decks that were not good against this. All right, what design in the set do you feel has the most wasted potential?
So the lame answer would be Rising Waters, because I could have, if you would have just made Rising Waters horribly unplayable, the rest of the set would have played so much better. But that's a pretty fake answer. So my real answer is probably Wrathy Intimidator. It's possible that it's Wrathy Fiend, because I think that if you made Wrathy Fiend good enough, you could have got Wrathy Intimidator over. I think if you made Wrathy Intimidator good enough, you could for sure get Spineless Thug and maybe one of the Bully or whatever. Like, you could get that stuff over by making the Intimidator good enough, and that's what you go get, and you already have the 2-drop and a couple 1-drops in the previous set. But yeah, that's my biggest wasted potential, is either the Wrathy Intimidator or the Wrathy Fiend.
All right, my answer is Sliptide Serpent, our buddy on the booster pack. The set could really just use a normal card that's appealing and doesn't kill itself. Like, the set is not at a loss for fanciness. It's not a loss for 5 and 6 mana creatures that are 3/3s. Like that's kind of covered already. And could you just give me a fun, appealing card in this rare slot? And this card is so bad. It's, not even close to draft playable in modern times.
Yeah, what's the rate that it would take for you to get in?
Well, what do you mean by rate?
How much? What would it have to cost
for 4/4 and pay blue 3 return to hand?
Yeah,
in 2025.
No, at the time. Because it's a thing that people wanted.
I think at blue 2 it would have been plausible.
Just on the body?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about like what's for its ability, I guess, to get it over.
Sure.
I mean, you can make its cost a little cheaper, but at a certain point, it's pretty fake if you're not even using it for the ability.
I mean, I wonder if you could have done something with like return an island to your hand. Then it's at least like speaking to a set theme.
Or like, what if the card's like 1 and a blue, return 2 islands to your hand?
Sure. Yeah.
Or just blue, return 2 islands to your hand, so you can make a profit.
Yeah. The fact that this is so boring and not what do you even think about doing with this?
Well, it's a victory condition.
Yeah, in the like Rainbow Efreet.
Yeah, exactly.
School of except not really, because it's.
I played with this card in draft before. It was a little bit of a leak, but.
Yeah, I just really wish there was this set is kind of how much the space of the set is just the mechanical stuff and variations of the mechanical stuff, that I think there's a burden on the normal cards, the normal rares to be a little bit more appealing and straightforward than usual. And this is just not that at all.
I wish I do think, I mean, it's not by far, it's not the biggest wasted opportunity or whatever, but it would have been cool if they tapped in a little bit to this card gets stronger as we get to the end of its fading. Mm-hmm. Like, imagine if there was a card that every time you remove a fading counter, it gets a +1/+1 counter. So like, or whatever. So you start off with a 1/1 double strike and it becomes a 2/2 double strike and a 3/3 double strike or whatever. Like, there isn't quite that experience. There's some, this is how it is for however long. And then there's this is how it is, but I can like sacrifice some of the future to change what option I'm making now, but making things weaker. They don't really have it's getting stronger as the tension comes to the end, which I think is a wasted opportunity.
Yeah. All right. Last, certainly not least, what's your favorite card in the set?
So it depends. There's a lot of different lenses. In my heart of hearts, it's Death Pit Offering as a design. As a card that exists to play with and everything, it's Sapling Burst. As a just being true to who I am and where I exist in the world, it's still Days. It's always Days. Days is my answer to everything. But you can't answer Days to everything. And Death Pit Offering is my favorite design. Sapling Burst might be my favorite card. Honestly, this is a horrible answer. Honorable mention to Submerge. That's a guilty pleasure of mine. I have derived a lot of pleasure in my life because Submerge exists.
You know what? Me too. Every single time that I've submerged someone in a legacy event, I'm like, I can't believe they let me do this. This is unbelievable. And my opponent just, they work so hard to get their Tarmogoyf to resolve through dazes and wastelands and spell snares and everything else. And now this is what happens?
I mean, when my Dragonstorm Worlds had a legacy portion, and you better believe I submerged people's Tarmogoyfs. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, I have my floor for my legacy sideboard is, assuming I'm playing Delver, is 1 submerge. That's if I assume that it will not come in the entire day. If I think it's going to be coming in, then we're talking about 2 or 3.
One of the things that made me really, this is not a good thing. This doesn't speak well about my predilections, but I have revealed Submerge to my, like, I've used Sensei's Divining Top and revealed Submerge to counter other people's Force of Wills. Like, a lot. That it is getting to put more 5s in your deck that are, damn well you're not playing that card for 5. And it's like, you didn't play your card for 5 either. Yeah. Come on, man.
Yeah, we're all lying out here.
Come on, yeah, like
yeah. My favorite card in the set. It's a guilty pleasure, and I think a worse guilty pleasure than Submerge. Gotta give it to Parallax Tide.
Ooh, that's a spicy answer.
This was my first deck that I made like a deep run in a big tournament with was regionals after the set came out. And it was just mono blue pirates with Tide. And so Nemesis was the newest set, right? So there's like this level of, well, what cards are even that good? And it's, information isn't as available, back then as it is today. And the number of people who had to pick up and read Parallax Tide, and then the look on their face of like, I'm not going to have any mana for 3 turns or whatever. Yeah, I enjoy playing that one. Not the most dynamic of the Parallax cards. It is kind of the same joke over and over again. But for me at the time, it felt like something new. Had a lot of fun with that one.
It's at a great power level.
Yeah,
I think that relative to how fun that joke is, it's at a power level that makes it so that that's a real thing to even... Now, Rising Waters obviously makes it not a thing in real life, but that makes it a thing to think about, and also it's a toy to put down when you've had your fill, instead of just rubbing people's nose in it.
Yes, exactly. A lot of great... I had a lot of competition for my answers this time around.
Absolutely. This isn't...
So many... So it's a Spike's paradise, this set. This is the best. With that, We'll be back in just a moment. Little show wrap up and grade. Okay, so welcome back. What we've all been waiting for, the scoreboard. Give this a set a letter grade.
Give the set a letter grade. In context, a B plus. I know. I wish so badly I could give it an A or an A minus, but I can't.
My grade is a B.
B.
B. Yeah. You go first.
Like we saw with Mercadian Mask, this set is it's an evolving wilds away from such a better place. Like if you literally just made evolving wilds and not rising water and did nothing else. Mm-hmm. And there's there's a million things you could do to make this better. Like, I'd rather have the removal not all be color hosers, and I'd rather have anyway, there's a lot to like in this set. Just like with Mercadian Mask, there are some glaring gaps that really take it down. And part of the grade is also being subsidized by the fact that in context, our standards were so low. This set was such a shining, redeeming beat. And it came at a really important time for there to be a little bit of hope that sets could be sweet again. But I think that it's such a weird time to follow the Resleevables block anyway. And then Mercadian Mask was a disappointment in many ways. And I think this set delivered at a time that Magic really needed it. I think that under modern design sensibilities, the gaps, the failings are so bad. Set aside the power level compared to today's power level or whatever. I think that it would probably not hold up in certain ways quite as well as replayable, because I think some of those gaps, our standards are just so different now that those gaps would be so jarring.
Yeah. I'm largely in the same place. The set was such an improvement on Mercadian Masks, and given that there was an awareness of, okay, well, the game's powering down, and Mercadian Masks being sort of not the most inspiring place to put the flag down on what that world is going to look like. Coming back to a set where there's stuff that's new and novel and different and powerful. And it's like, okay, I know for me personally, this set built up a lot of trust and credibility with myself and the game at the time of, okay, Masks was just a blip. They are going to solve this. Now it turns out the set after this, maybe not, maybe we're back to square one again.
No. The set after this, Invasion is a sweet set.
No, you're right. You're right.
Because there's no real set after this.
Yeah, there's gold cards and 2 color pairings things, but yeah. Rising Waters.
Yeah, the prophecy that Magic will be great again. It's going to come to fruition. I can feel it.
Yeah, I don't want to. I can't even wrap my head around.
I'm excited for it.
I can't even wrap my head around doing that one.
I am thrilled. I am so excited. That's one of my favorite sets in a inverted kind of way.
Well, let's talk about that, shall we? First of all, if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you. Be nice if you liked and subscribed. You can find a lot of just clips of the Unsleeved podcast, of Tournament Edition, of old episodes in our YouTube channel. So if you want to just start plowing through the backlog of stuff, there's hours and hours and hours of video back there. You can also, if you want to, subscribe over at patreon.com/Resleevables. That's where you're going to find the Unsleeved podcast that Patrick and I do once a week, sometimes more, sometimes we're too busy traveling the world and things but whatever, roughly once a week. And you can find a bunch of tiers here, including early access to these videos. Follow us on Twitter at the Resleevables. And thank you to our sponsors. First of all, Dragon Shield. Again, dragonshield.com. And then when you check out, use promo code Resleevables, all lowercase letters, for 5% off your order. Please use the affiliate link in the show notes. Tales of Adventure. Eternal lives here. Promo code Resleevables, 5% off all your orders. TOAmagic.com and TOA Michael on Twitter. Botch and Roll. Go watch his channel. You're already here on YouTube, presumably. So go check it out. Botch and Roll. What's next? Prophecy. Good Lord.
Yes.
This is going to be commitment to the craft.
Dude, I'm gonna have to evoke some of one of my great game design inspirations, Matt Place. He's had some things to say about prophecy. I'm excited.
I mean, when we were working together, I had a stack of foil Ristic Caves, and I gave one to each of the new hires. And what's the lesson there? Most designs are bad. You're familiar with the ones that go to print. You're familiar with the ones that show up to tournaments, whatever. Most ideas are bad, and this was someone's bad idea. Until next time, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon. All right, starting over. Cut this right. Welcome back to the Resleevables. Cut. Fuck. All right, hold on.
We'll do it live.
Welcome back to the Resleevables Nemesis edition. Shit. Stop. Fuck. I don't want to do this. How do I want to do this? They're the one-stop shop you need for seal. I'm gonna fucking lose my mind. At least there's something for the outtake here. I swear this doesn't happen to me. A word from our sponsor, or for our sponsor. Fuck! Start over! Shit!
How many sponsors?
We're up to 3 now.